Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the FT studio for our latest PWM Perspectives Series, looking at the world in crisis. This series is filmed in partnership with government advisory and marketing firm CS Global Partners. Today, we will look at migration patterns and how entrepreneurs are escaping from geopolitical turmoil, including the war in Ukraine, obtaining citizenship in other territories and jurisdictions. Our main focus will be citizenship by investment. We will particularly highlight due diligence, examining how migration hubs can verify credentials of families looking to secure a new citizenship. Our guests today are representatives of three major due diligence investigation agencies. Karen Kelly joins me from Toronto in Canada, where she is Director of Strategy and Development at Exiger, dedicated to help fight fraud and financial crime. Hello, Karen.
Hello, Yuri. Thanks for having me.
From here in London, Eddy Leviton is Chief Operating Officer of the FACT Worldwide Due Diligence Operation. Welcome, Eddy.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Heyrick Bond Gunning, also here in London, is CEO of SRM. Good to see you, Heyrick.
Good to see you, Yuri.
In our opening chapter, we will discuss what is due diligence and how does it work. Karen, you are a visa and immigration specialist. Why do jurisdictions need to conduct extensive due diligence of people looking to acquire citizenship?
Thanks, Yuri. It's a great question. Obviously, when a country is considering bestowing citizenship on an investor, it requires very in-depth look at that investor, who they are, what their background is, and where their funds are coming from. So an important piece of that is engaging a third-party expert, such as Exiger, such as my colleagues' companies, to look into these applicants at an in-depth level. That involves document verification, checking that they are who they say they are, looking at things like birth certificates, marriage certificates, education, so degrees, looking at their business qualifications, then taking it a step further, looking at, are there any criminal convictions? Are there any hits on sanctions lists or watch lists around the world? Are they subject to litigation or judgments? And then finally, looking at their source of wealth and their reputation in detail. So not only research what's out there in open sources, but using and making use of on-the-ground intelligence resources, asking questions of people who know these individuals. Where do they get their wealth? What is their reputation?
Thank you, Karen. And if I can bring in Eddy Leviton, you are often a media commentator on fraud and business intelligence, and you have colleagues who worked for the City of London Police and Interpol combating economic crime. Isn't it easy for powerful and resourceful individuals from nefarious backgrounds to either forge, buy, or coerce people to supply the key supporting documents necessary to back an application?
Well, that's not our experience in the case of citizenship schemes, interestingly enough. I think, firstly, in your introduction, you talked about wealthy people having access to these schemes. A lot of these people aren't what you would say are super rich or super wealthy. There are people who are looking for a safe haven for their families. They're escaping persecution, war zones, obviously, which is incredibly topical at the moment, and then looking for opportunities to develop their business interests as well. What we have seen is very, very, very few instances of fraud, of forgery of documents. And if they are taking place, they're very clearly detected because of the systems that all of us have in place to be able to do that, because we're cross-referencing lots and lots of different databases. So, for example, if you we're checking records in country of birth, marriages, deaths of family, educational qualifications, and employment as well. So you would very quickly get found out if you were trying to do that. And to be quite frank, if you were really a master criminal looking to avoid prosecution in a country, this isn't a route for you. There would be better ways for fraudsters to be able to hide their assets and move themselves around the world.
So, but I assume that you have, where a family applies, you have a lead applicant and then some family members can come in on the same application. Is there a possibility of a much deeper due diligence being undertaken on the lead applicant and then some family members who may have different relationships and different business dealings kind of coming in on the same application without that level of scrutiny?
No, we apply scrutiny to the dependents as well, and also close family members as well. So are there political affiliations, political exposure? Is there negative media? Have there been criminal convictions against those members of families as well? So those checks are carried out across all the applicants, and then the relationships as well. And we look at relationship charts between not just the applicants, the dependents, but their associates, whether those are in business or in their families.
Because, I mean, this is vital, I assume, Eddy, for the reputation of the countries involved, because we've seen some cases in some jurisdictions, I think in Europe, where an applicant has passed the due diligence operations when perhaps they shouldn't have, and then that really affects the brand of and the reputation of the country they've entered.
Absolutely, and we were just talking earlier about the level of checks that are carried out, and certainly what you're finding now is that broadly across the main jurisdictions, the main countries that offer these schemes now, they have very high levels of due diligence, and certainly all the clients that we have offer very, very high levels of due diligence. One of the countries in question actually uses 2 due diligence companies to be able to cross-reference the work that is being done to be able to make sure that they are picking up on anything. And don't forget, the fact that you know about these incidents that are happening means that something has gone wrong somewhere and that has been exposed. So the reputational risk of the countries and the risk to their schemes is so great now that I think anyone involved in this now is realizing that the due diligence standards need to be the highest possible standard. The final thing to say is that we provide a report back to the clients. What the client does with that report and how they determine the application is not down to us. So whatever we do is a report that is handed over. It's then up to the client to make the judgment on whether they grant citizenship or residency off the back of that report. We don't make the final decision. We're not the arbiters in this case. We're independent.
Okay. And if I bring in Heyrick, because you worked for Kroll in the past, a famous risk advisory firm, so I'm sure your people would know which country that was. I mean, what are some of the common red flags that you have seen come to light during the due diligence process?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Yuri. I think when we look across the board, it does vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, so in terms of where the applicants are coming from. But I think if we look at ones, across the whole board, we're looking at about 4.5–5% of the applicants that have something wrong with them. And so that might be the fact that they've used false documentation from an identity perspective, or that they've got red flags that appear, as Eddy talked about, because of their business associates, or that they simply don't work in the sector that they claim to be working in, that is where they've derived their source of wealth. And that, and so there's a variety of issues that we see crop up, and those will be the issues that we flag to the clients. I think what's really important in terms of your earlier question around some of those programs that have had problems is the ongoing monitoring that then happens after the report's been written, because of course people's circumstances do change, and what we're doing is providing evidence around this sort of snapshot in time, and situations change over time. And so that live time monitoring, which is something that the units are now doing, has become increasingly important so that they can stay on top of any potential challenges or issues that arise.